If you're hearing this story, it's because you might need a reminder. A reminder that life, even when it seems like a dead-end maze, can lead you to the exact place you're meant to be. This is the story of Isabela, a young woman who lost everything, and Gustavo, a man who had everything but felt like he had nothing. Together they learned that destiny sometimes has a kinder plan than we imagine. At 19, Isabela was living in darkness. A year earlier, a brutal car accident had taken her parents, leaving a huge void and a disturbing silence. Her aunt and uncle, Clara and Marcos, instead of filling that void, turned it into a business opportunity. Isabela became a burden, another mouth to feed, until they saw her as a bargaining chip. They would give her away in an arranged marriage to Gustavo Medeiros, an agribusiness billionaire, to settle their debts and secure their own future. Isabela only knew Gustavo by his reputation, an imposing, middle-aged man with an empire as vast as his silence, a man who rarely smiled and who lived in isolation on his sprawling property in the heart of Minas Gerais. The marriage wasn't the start of a new life, but the end of the little she still felt was her own. She got into the car that would take her to the estate, her heart weeping and her arms clutching what was left of her dignity. The Fazenda Ouro Verde, Gustavo's home, was a spectacle. Thousands of acres of land, colonial buildings, and a main mansion that looked like it was pulled from a magazine. For Isabela, however, it was a gilded cage. She was taken to the main bedroom, a luxurious and cold space where a wedding dress was waiting for her. The wedding was a rushed ceremony, a business event attended by just a few people, where the only sound was the classical music and the guests' low murmurs. Gustavo's gaze was impenetrable, and he barely spoke to her, except for the "I do" at the altar. That night, their wedding night, Isabela's fear peaked. She sat on the edge of the bed, waiting for the inevitable, imagining the worst that could happen. The door opened, and Gustavo walked in. He was wearing only black silk pajama pants. He looked at her for a moment, and with a deep, serious voice, said, "I know this situation isn't easy, but I'm not the monster you imagine. I won't touch you. This is your home, and you are safe here." And with a gesture that surprised her, he grabbed a blanket and a pillow and went to sleep on the sofa at the foot of the bed. For the first time in months, Isabela felt at peace, even in such a strange place, and in a silence that, all of a sudden, no longer seemed so frightening.
Sometimes, love isn't born from a spark, but from small, quiet acts of kindness. After that first night, Isabela's fear began to melt away, replaced by a sense of curiosity. Who was this man the world feared, really? The days that followed changed Isabela's routine. Gustavo continued to be a man of few words, but clear actions. He treated her with respect, giving her the space and freedom to explore the farm. Isabela, who had once felt like a prisoner, began to discover the beauty of the place. She spent her mornings in the garden, helping the staff, and her afternoons in the library, where she discovered a love for literature that reconnected her to a part of herself she thought she had lost. With each passing day, a piece of the armor of fear she wore fell away, revealing the intelligent and curious young woman who had been hiding. Gustavo, in turn, watched Isabela's transformation from a distance. He noticed the sparkle in her eyes when she talked about the books she was reading, the way she laughed with the employees' children, and the lightness she brought to the farm. One evening, he found her in the kitchen, trying to make chamomile tea. Her hands were shaking, and she looked nervous. He approached quietly, and with a surprisingly gentle voice, offered to help. Sitting at the table, with 2 steaming cups of tea, they had their first real conversation. Isabela, still speaking softly, told him about the loss of her parents, the emptiness she felt, and how her aunt and uncle had treated her. Gustavo listened intently, and for the first time, she saw a subtle emotion in his eyes: empathy. He then opened up, revealing that he had built his empire in the midst of loneliness, dedicating his life to work to escape the pain of a difficult past when he lost his father in a helicopter crash. "I thought work would make me whole, but I discovered that success without purpose is empty," he confessed. In that moment, Isabela realized that behind that powerful man was a human being who also carried his own wounds. The bridge of trust between them had finally been built.
The late-night chats, the hesitant touches, and the prolonged looks. What was once a business alliance was now becoming a garden where love carefully began to bloom. After that night in the kitchen, the distance between Isabela and Gustavo shrank. Their conversations became more frequent, and they started meeting for breakfast. Isabela began making chamomile tea for him, a small ritual of affection that said more than words. Gustavo, in turn, started joining her on her walks around the farm, listening attentively to her observations about nature, the cattle, and the children. It was a silent and delicate dance of getting closer, where every gesture was a step forward. One night, Isabela had a terrible nightmare. She woke up startled, drenched in a cold sweat, the sound of her parents' accident echoing in her mind. Her heart was pounding, and her breathing was ragged. Suddenly, the bedroom door opened. Gustavo was there, his blue eyes alert, his voice rough with sleep, and worry clear on his face. He sat on the edge of the bed, and the warmth of his hand on hers calmed her down. Still trembling, she confessed that she had relived seeing her parents and the accident. What followed was a moment of unexpected tenderness. He pulled her close, hugging her and nestling her head on his shoulder, letting her feel the steady beat of his heart. "It's okay," he whispered. "I'm here. You're not alone." Her body relaxed, and her muffled sobs turned into a sigh of relief. In that moment, Isabela realized her fear had completely disappeared. In an impulsive act, she lifted her head and asked him, "Why are you being so kind to me?" Gustavo's gaze darkened with a silent intensity. "Because I care about you, Isabela," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "From the moment I saw you, I knew you were special." Isabela's breath caught. She leaned forward, and their lips met in a kiss that was proof of the deep connection they had built. That kiss, tender and passionate, wasn't the start of a romance, but the culmination of a story of trust and overcoming adversity. It was the warmth of a new dawn in their lives. Love might be a whispered secret, but true commitment is a promise for the world to hear. Gustavo was about to show Isabela that with her, he wasn't afraid of anything. The love between Isabela and Gustavo grew quietly, protected within the farm's walls. But Gustavo, a man used to making grand public decisions, wanted the world to know about his love. He arranged a press conference at his company's headquarters in Sao Paulo. The room was filled with journalists and investors, all waiting for an important business announcement. Isabela, sitting in the front row, felt nervous and out of place. She watched Gustavo at the podium, as calm and imposing as ever, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, while everyone's attention was on him.
Gustavo began his speech, talking about the years he dedicated to building his empire, about the success and power he had achieved. But unexpectedly, his voice changed, becoming softer and full of emotion. He looked directly at Isabela and said, "For many years, I had everything money could buy, but none of it made me feel what I feel today. And the reason for that is right here, sitting in the front row. Her name is Isabela." Whispers spread through the room, but he continued, his voice firm and emotional. "I married her under difficult circumstances, and I didn't expect her to love me. But she showed me what it means to be a better person.
With her strength, her kindness, and her courage, she gave me the only thing I truly needed: love. Isabela's hands flew to her mouth, and tears came to her eyes, but Gustavo's gaze never left her. He took a black envelope from his jacket and with a smile continued, "To repay the gift she gave me, which is her love, I want her to have everything. This envelope contains the official documentation, transferring the full ownership of every company, every property, and every asset in my name to Isabela." A stunned silence hung in the room until it was broken by gasps of surprise. Gustavo stepped down from the podium and walked toward her, her legs trembling, and he held her hands. "This isn't about money, it's about trust," he whispered, his blue eyes burning with intensity. "I gave you your heart when I didn't deserve it, and now I want you to know that everything I am and everything I have belongs to you." Gustavo's words were a public promise of devotion. He wasn't just giving her wealth, but the freedom and the power to choose, to stay or to leave. It was the final and irrefutable proof of the love he felt for her.
Love can be the foundation of a home, but it's the small moments in the daily routine that turn it into a sanctuary. Isabela and Gustavo were about to build theirs. 3 years passed. Gustavo, who had spent his entire life on the sprawling farm, realized that the place, a symbol of his success, wasn't the home his family needed. He wanted something that represented the love he and Isabela had built together. A place for their son, little João, to grow up away from the opulence and solitude. That's how he surprised her with a charming and cozy house in a small town in Minas Gerais that looked like it came straight out of a fairy tale. The house was a colonial style, with white walls, blue windows, and a beautiful garden. It was smaller than the farm, but overflowed with potential. As she stepped inside, Isabela felt a wave of emotion. They explored every room, and Gustavo invited her to make all the decorating decisions. "This house is yours as much as it's mine," he said. "A place where we'll build our memories and a future for João." His vulnerability, the willingness to share every detail of their lives with her, melted Isabela's heart. A year later, the house was complete. It was a haven of peace, full of warmth and laughter. The garden was now little João's playground. The family felt complete. But on a crisp morning, Isabela felt that their happiness was about to multiply. She was pregnant again. The birth of Clara, named in honor of her late mother, was the pinnacle of their happiness. Gustavo, who had once been the lonely billionaire, revealed himself to be a loving and dedicated father. What began as a business marriage had transformed into a family, a home, and a love story that felt like a miracle. With every laugh from João, every tender look from Clara at her father, Isabela was reminded of how much her life had changed and how grateful she was for the man who pulled her out of a nightmare and led her into the most beautiful of dreams. Not every love story ends with a kiss. The best ones end with the certainty that the future is a blank book, and the most beautiful pages are yet to be written together. 5 years had passed since the day destiny brought them together. Life, which for Isabela began with fear and for Gustavo with loneliness, was now a canvas painted with the vibrant colors of love and family. The morning of their 5th wedding anniversary found Isabela waking up to the sound of excited voices in the kitchen and the smell of pancakes. Gustavo and João, now 4, were trying to make breakfast, while 2-year-old Clara watched them from her high chair with a toothless grin. The house was a home. The walls, full of photos of happy moments, told the story of a family that, unexpectedly, had become whole. Gustavo, his hair now sprinkled with gray, still had the same intense gaze, but now it was always mixed with an infinite tenderness. The anniversary was celebrated with the simplicity they loved: a picnic at the park with the kids,
ice cream, and lots of laughter. Later, with the children fast asleep, Isabela found the room transformed. Candles, rose petals, and a bottle of champagne were waiting for her. Gustavo, the man who was once a mystery, gifted her a delicate diamond necklace, with each star representing a year they had been together and a promise of many more to come. "You saved me, Isabela," he confessed, his voice full of emotion. "You brought light into my life and gave me the family I never knew I needed. You gave me a purpose." The tears that streamed down Isabela's face weren't from sadness, but from overwhelming happiness. She nestled into his arms, feeling the beat of his heart under her hand, the steady rhythm that had become the music of her life. It was then that she looked at the necklace around her neck and the wedding ring on her hand. The symbols of a marriage that started without love now represented the greatest proof that sometimes destiny's plans are far wiser and kinder than we could ever imagine.
This story of Isabela and Gustavo is a reminder that even when life pushes us down paths we didn't choose, love can still be found. It's a celebration of hope, patience, and the certainty that home isn't a place, but the person who makes us feel whole. And for them, life, which began with a goodbye, was just getting started. The story of Isabela and Gustavo is a powerful reminder that not every pain ends in tragedy. It's a beacon of hope for everyone who feels lost, a testament that true love can't be bought. It's built with patience, respect, and vulnerability. If you connected with this journey of overcoming adversity and believe in the transformative power of love, leave a comment below. Share which part of the story touched your heart the most. And to make sure you don't miss any of our inspiring stories, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way, you'll be alerted whenever a new story is released.